Well, Sam Pollard, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us right here on Meet Me the Movie Open Dialogue. Really, really good to see you, and I hope you're healthy and safe.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. Uh, there have been so many documentaries covering the life of Martin Luther King Jr. This one is different, and I want to hear you talk about how this one is different and what was it that sparked that desire to tell this particular story.
This one is different because I think what we tried to do is we tried to show him as sort of what I call as a well-rounded human being, a human being with flaws and all, not just paint him as the civil rights icon and deity that he's become to many people,
Right.
and show that he had the stuff that he had to grapple with. He was a man who was challenged with multitasking, like many of us do, and sometimes that brings a lot of weight on your shoulders and can be pretty stressful. I mean, here we go. We have a man who all of a sudden in late 55, 56 is thrust into the leadership of the Montgomery bus boycott. He goes on in by the late 50s to create his own organization, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He's doing demonstrations in southern cities like Birmingham and Albany, Georgia, and Selma. He's become really the voice of the movement. And by 63 with the March on Washington, you know, people are recognize him, as A. Philip Randolph says, as the moral leader of this
Yeah.
movement. But then he has to come to grips with the fact that a gentleman named J. Edgar Hoover and a gentleman named William Sullivan, the FBI, sees him, this nonviolent activist, quite honestly, man, as a radical,
Yeah.
as the
Yeah.
most dangerous Negro in America. And so, with the permission, of Bobby Kennedy, the Attorney General, J. Edgar Hoover begins monitoring King because, first of all, of his relationship with Stanley Levinson, who was a former communist, he's probably dead sure that Dr. King is flirting with the Communist Party. And as they wiretap King, as they're wiring tap King and his associates, they learn that King has a very complicated personal life. And all of a sudden they change, as they say, they change horses in midstream and say, okay, we may not get the communist thing to stick, but the fact that he has a very complicated personal life, if we use it properly, we can make that stick. But the thing to remember is that in the 60s, the press wasn't hungry like we are today
Mhm.
to grab onto people's personal life and exploit that. They didn't do that back then. And so they couldn't get that to stick. So then what does Hoover do? He has Sullivan come up with a letter, create a letter. Basically, it's supposed to be from one of King's associates, and basically saying, we know who you are. We know how horrible you are. We know what you're doing. You know what to do. Basically intimating that maybe King should kill himself. And on top of it, sending an audio tape that's supposed to be Dr. King in a situation with another woman to his wife, Coretta Scott King. This is some dastardly and dirty things that they're doing, dirty tricks of the highest order. And that's why James Comey says this is, from his perspective, this is one of the darkest chapters in the history of the FBI.
Research for any documentary is monumental, but for something like this, even more so. As a filmmaker and a researcher, talk about the process that you went through, finding this information and deciding then, okay, what do I take to that final cut?
Right. First of all, we knew there was a book that we had read, both of us, myself and my producer Ben Hadeen, about King and being surveilled by Hoover and the FBI, written by the historian David Garrow. So we had that book as a source. Then Ben went to he requested transcripts from the Freedom of Information Act to get of transcripts of the audio tapes that the FBI had done of King. So we got that material. Some of it was heavily redacted, but some of it you could read some of these excerpts that we used in the film. Then thirdly, we knew that if we got funding, we brought on an archival producer, a
Mhm.
gentleman named Brian Becker, who did tremendous amount of work in digging into these archives to find what we always knew were the usual suspects: the March on Washington, the Birmingham's, material, all that stuff, Nobel Peace Prize material.
Right.
But a good archival producer will find new things, and he did. He found the material of King with his family and his parents, with Coretta and his kids, which I had never seen before.
Yeah.
He found this footage that I had never seen of King doing one of his first television interviews with this reporter in
Wow.
Montgomery, which is fantastic. He found this footage of Scotland Yard having James Earl Ray in custody,
Yeah.
after he was arrested. I mean, this is the kind of stuff you hope to find. Unearth new things that you can put into your film, which this producer was able to do. And it was hours and hours of material, archival audio that our editor, Laura Tomaselli, had to go through. I mean, some of the other stuff that's fantastic is that audio tape with LBJ talking to King, talking to Hoover. That's great stuff.
Well, you talk about editing, and the editing on this is absolutely fascinating. And I think so many times the unsung heroes of documentaries are the editors to be able to pull those puzzle pieces together into something. So magnificent editing on this. I think with any documentary, if we allow ourselves, we can learn something about ourselves personally and also about ourselves as a people. What did you learn about yourself as you pulled this together, and what do you hope that others can learn about themselves?
Well, what I learned was this: that this history that we think we know about, there's always other aspects of it that you can find out and learn, and it's amazing the things that you think you've known about a subject or a person, and all of a sudden something else is revealed. That to me is always a revelation. And I think for the audience, I would like for them to have that same surprise. Oh, I didn't know this about King. I didn't know this about Hoover. I didn't know this about how the mythology of the FBI was built and varnished. That's what I hope the audience comes away with. The other thing that I hope the audience comes away with is that what we're seeing in this film is really a wake-up call, Noel, the fact that America is still struggling with some of these issues on a regular basis, as we've seen, in this country. And if this country is ever really to come to grips with the systemic racism and this, that we have, they got to be able to understand their past, which many Americans, tend not to even think about or don't care about. Oh, that was in the past. But most of that stuff resonates with today, as you know.
Yeah. But the past is part of who we are. We do not have to let it define us.
That's right.
But we have to be aware of it, and we have to look at the mistakes that we have made along our journey, and hopefully we can learn from those that we will make different decisions going forward.
Right.
And it is a constant. It is a constant to be aware of who we are and how can we be better. How can we be better?
That's right. That's a constant that we should all take. We should all really sort of always try to keep in part of us, that we always have to figure out how to be better.
Yeah. Sam Pollard, our guest right here on Open Dialogue for Meet Me at the Movies. Do you have any other thoughts or comments you would like to share with our audience today?
No. Just have a good day and be safe, man.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. The film is MLK FBI. And where can people find this?
IFC theaters and streaming.
Absolutely. For Meet Me at the Movies, Open Dialogue, I'm Noel T. Manning II. Thanks again, Sam Pollard.
My pleasure.
Until next time, that's a wrap.
Have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Great talk.